difference between that is sacrifice means that you are being victimized. It feels like you're not the one in control, whereas making that strategic trade-off, it means that you are making that decision, that trade-off.
Hi everyone, my name is Patricia Tan. I'm the Executive Recruiter for Sales and Marketing, Digital and Technology. Welcome to the second episode of the Shift Podcast, where we chat with movers and shakers within the digital and technology industries. For this second episode, I would like to introduce today's guest. She is not only an independent director and board members for multiple boards, including AIG Asia Pacific Board, Maxis Berhad in Malaysia, Pacific Century Group Hong Kong, Bridgetown 3 SPAC. She's also a member of the Board of Governance, Raffles Institution, appointment by Ministry of Education Singapore. She's also previously the head of MD of GrabPay Southeast Asia. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Ting. Hello.
Hello, thank you, Pat.
So tell us, Ting, what is keeping you busy these days?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure, really. Yeah, I suppose these days, after I left Grab, as you know, I left Grab last September.
Yes.
And I decided to give myself the gift of time. So what I did was I wanted to have more flexibility in life and more control over what I want to do with my time, as well as who I want to spend it with.
Yeah.
So now in between board meetings, I find time to connect with friends, visited my parents in Penang, spent some time with my sisters in KL, and I also renovated our rooftop garden.
Which is something you never had time in the past, right?
To include like a music lounge.
Yeah.
And for the first time, I learned how to meditate, to do a bit of gardening.
Ting, you just mentioned the gift of time. You're supposed to slow down.
To have the gift of time to do what you want.
Oh, wow.
So these are the things that I want to do. And I finally found time. The most exciting bit about is that I finally found time to attend this INSEAD program called the International Directors Program, so that I can continue to improve and become a more effective board member. That's my next phase.
You have worked across FMCG, financial services, that's when I known you, technology, payments, and now, board position. Like, that is really impressive for the last, 20 years.
30 years.
30 years in total. Oh my goodness, 30 years. You do not look anything more than 30 years in the workforce. How do you adapt and yet at the same time thrive?
I would say perhaps courage, resiliency, and a bit of luck. I had 3 critical turning points. As you know, I've started my career in FMCG, Procter & Gamble as a financial analyst.
Financial analyst?
Yeah, my early ambition was to be a CFO. So after spending the first 8 years acquiring all the skills and experiences I need to become one, I decided that CFO is not my calling after all. So in 1999 came my first turning point. I had the opportunity to join a startup. So it took a lot of courage, I would say. And that was during the time it was a dot-com bubble.
Right.
So I joined a startup, and we had a very audacious goal. We wanted to be the .com or the e-commerce marketplace for Southeast Asia. Our business model was similar to Alibaba.com. So we launched about, I think just a few months after Alibaba.com was launched. Yeah, so we wanted to be the leading e-commerce marketplace for Southeast Asia, while Alibaba can be for China. However, I think if you recall, the dot-com bubble peaked in late 2000 and then crashed. And you probably could guess what happened next. So we did not make it. So I left shortly after. I think in 2002. I must say that I was overworked, burnt out. I was also pregnant with my daughter, my second.
Okay.
My daughter. And I left without a job and also developed this stress-induced migraine. So
Oh,
that was
no.
the lowest point of my career and my
Right.
life.
That was before your first banking position.
Yes, that was before.
Wow.
So that's
Okay.
the banking position is my second turning point. Yeah.
Right.
So I think we met around that time.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. So I failed in my startup, but I also gained a larger network. So I met my first mentor and sponsor from Citibank.
Okay.
Yeah, and that opened up another new career path for me to join the banking industry.
Yeah.
So shortly after I gave birth, I joined Citibank,
Okay.
and that also eventually opened up a string of opportunities in banking as well as in payments. Yeah.
You know, I recall meeting you during your days in City. You know, Ting, I always say, Ting, you work so hard. And I recall saying that to you. Until today, right? I still remember the exact words you said to me. You said, Pat, because I was late in the banking,
Yes.
I have to work even harder than anyone, you know, to play catch-up game. That sentence just, you know, still stuck in my head for a long time.
I think probably having the humility to also know that you don't know everything, and especially coming into banking, that was my mid-career shift, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely, at the time, I was always going for the stretch assignments. And I didn't really care too much about how much you're going to pay me more. I think coming to the third turning point was after spending 15 years in the banking and financial industry, when I was the country head of Visa Singapore,
right.
I met Anthony Tan.
Okay.
Is the co-founder of Grab.
Right.
We served on the same payments council,
Okay.
chaired by Ravi Menon,
Okay.
MAS.
Okay.
So, you know, obviously my decision to join Grab was took a lot of courage and a bit of faith. Of course, Anthony was very convincing as well.
Of course.
So I recall at the time, that was in late 2017, early 2018, Grab was barely 5 years old, and Uber was still in town.
Yeah.
So I joined Grab, of course, to head up the GrabPay business. So I must say, looking back, that was probably it's an incredible opportunity. And I think the journey to be able to launch GrabPay in multiple markets across Southeast Asia within less than 2 years.
Do you seek out these opportunities, or you know, how did these opportunities knock on your door?
I really didn't think about it. But because you're not the first one who asked me about this.
Yeah.
So I think during COVID, I took some time off to reflect on what I did, the journey, and I decided to write an article for Business Times.
Right.
The title is about, you know, how do you build up your own personal unique advantage over time to help you attract more opportunities.
Oh, I want to hear more.
Yeah.
Please tell us more.
So that article, there were I think there were 5 different elements, 5 different tips. The number one, I started during my earlier year of my career, my initial stage is all about investing time to build up your domain knowledge and competencies, so that can be your personal USP, your advantage, right?
Yeah.
Because that competency is an advantage that helps you gain more opportunities, open doors for you to take on more stress assignment, so that you can continue to learn. I believe you learn the fastest in your discomfort zone. And that will then better position you for the next opportunity as well. The other critical factor is actually your executive presence.
What is that? Everyone tends to use this executive presence quite a fair bit.
Yeah.
Right? And can you share with us?
Yeah,
a little bit
I
more?
would say that this is something that, you know, this term, this executive presence, is a term that's often shrouded in mistake, as if it's something magical. And don't you hate it when someone give you feedback? Oh, you lack executive presence.
Of course.
What does it really mean?
What does it really mean? Is it just dressing? Is it just the way you walk, or you carry yourself? What is it?
So I like to demystify and simplify.
Please do.
First of all, it's a skill, not a trait, therefore it's something that you can cultivate and build.
Okay, so
Right.
it's not born with it.
You can build. You can build.
Okay, that's
And,
comforting.
and it is simply the ability for someone to communicate in a way that inspire confidence in
Right.
others so that they believe you have what it takes or the potential to achieve your great potential
Okay.
and do the job.
Okay.
So think about how you present in meeting. It's a
Right.
package, right? Think about how
Right.
you present in meeting. So one needs to always show up ready, prepared, and looking the part.
I think executive presence always being, like you say, misconceived as just the way you dress, just the way you walk in, whether your voice is louder than the others, but it's definitely not, right? It's really about, like you say, instilling the confidence in
Yes.
others that people look at you as you have the depth of the knowledge.
As I reflected, right, the third point I shared in my article is about reputation, because I think good reputation can be your capital. I would say that so every job, every opportunity that comes your way is important because you have a track record, right?
Right.
And reputation is also shaped by people who talked about you.
That's
well,
an
right?
interesting one. I think perception, right? How people think of you and all that, and very often hard decisions are the toughest to make and
Yeah.
the hardest to please people. And how do you manage that reputation?
So it depends on what kind of
Yeah.
reputation that
Yeah.
you want to build for yourself, right? So I think the power of reputation helps
you
to inspire confidence,
right.
and I think it also amplifies your strength, so that a lot of work is done for you before you arrive at the scene. The other element I like to highlight is networking. So there's a saying that everybody has heard, right? It's not what you know, is who you know.
Oh, well said. What is networking in the workplace, though?
Okay, networking is just simply the ability to know more people, and especially more people that could help you along the way.
So it's not just limited to the company, it's outside of the company,
yeah.
within industry, across and all.
Across
Wow.
a different industry, because you may not stay in the same industry all the time, right? So I would say that the secret of networking is to be at the right place. And I would say oftentimes in conferences and forum, it's a good place to get to know your potential mentors,
I was about to
sponsors,
ask,
and all that, right?
Where is the best place?
Yeah, and most of us, tend in a networking session. What would you do usually?
I will go when the speakers start. When the speakers stop talking, when the event ends, I leave the place.
You leave?
I leave.
So that is a very important session where you may find your potential mentors, coaches, and sponsors. And also, we should resist the natural tendency to look for someone familiar. When you see someone new, try to resist the eagerness to tell your own stories. Instead, ask the person about what's new, listen to them, and find common ground to connect.
And build a rapport.
Build a rapport to learn, right?
But that's very good. It's about conscious effort, going out there, networking, not just people you know, but people that you don't know, and building the rapport, finding common grounds from there.
Yeah, and you have to be intentional about this.
That's really powerful. What about the last one?
So the last one, we spoke about, competency, your executive presence, your reputation, and your network.
Yeah.
Like all these, of course, naturally, they're going to attract more opportunities and leadership opportunities for you, right? But there's also another saying in leadership. All the important decisions about you are made when you're not in the room.
How so? Meaning,
think about when they discuss about your next career aspiration, your promotion. Are you in the room?
No, not at all.
So having the sponsor, the coach, or the or the mentors is important. It's your added advantage. You may want to ask, like, what's the difference between a coach?
What is the difference?
A sponsor and a mentor. So let's start with a coach. A coach is someone can be within or outside the company,
right?
That can teach you about a particular subject so that it can improve your domain knowledge. So that's a coach. A mentor also can be inside or outside, but it's someone who is a wise person that can share important insights to help you navigate challenging situations and guide you. A sponsor, on the other hand, is probably the most difficult to find. Is typically someone within the organization and hopefully someone influential that is willing to help you spot new opportunities.
Right.
And then speak up for you when you're not in the room. And then inspire confidence in key decision makers so that you have access to visible assignments.
I see. But how do we seek out to those sponsors?
Okay, so I would say one needs to cultivate, invest and cultivate. And I think this is a question that a lot of people ask me about. And I'm thinking about writing another article.
But how do I approach, how do I build that sponsorship network within an organization?
Sometimes in life, if you find one sponsor, you're lucky. Having two is rare.
Yeah.
And because it's someone who is willing to spend his or her own political capital on you.
So true.
And vouch for you.
So true. Yeah.
Right. And put his or her own reputation on the line for you.
Yeah, of course. Because that person will still be working in an organization. You got to make sure you prove what the person say as well, right?
So I would say that in order to find a sponsor, I think the number one is you got to be a good or a star performer. That's prerequisite. That the rest have to think about it and write the article. And perhaps we can talk about
it. We're looking forward to that. But before we go to your board, I mean, in your journey, right? Obviously, moving different industry from FMCG to financial services to tech to now board. Is there any? I'm curious. What are the tips for someone out there who's looking for a switch in industry?
Of course, resiliency you need to build.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that you may. I think over time, especially when you encounter more and more setbacks, and you're able to bounce back, and learn from it, you become more resilient.
Right.
So,
what would be your biggest setback then?
That biggest setback was actually the startup, right?
Right.
So I bounced back from the startup and went on to have the banking career. But I recall my sponsor, who opened the door for me to join the banking industry. Years later, I asked him, "Now, what do you see in me that you thought, having no banking experience, I should join banking?"
Correct.
Right, and he shared this point. He said that, "I saw you as someone who has a lot of tenacity and resiliency, and I know that you would just swim even I throw you in the deep blue sea."
Previous episode, we talk about facing adversity. You come out stronger, and you reckon that resilience can be built through adversity. Am I right to say that?
Yes, I would say that.
Let's talk more about your board leadership. I never expected there's so many different boards, but let's talk about what inspired you to join board leadership. Is that something that has always been, what you're wanting to do?
Looking back at my 30 years of career, it feels like a multiple 100-meter sprint, one after another, because
so true.
I've always taken up so many different roles. That means I'm always in my discomfort zone, right? So after I left Grab, instead of looking for another 100-meter sprint, I was looking for a more scenic but yet challenging route. And I thought board role is another good way of contributing back, making an impact. I also believe that we need more women to step up to take on board roles.
Oh.
Yeah. Because I think based on the Singapore Directorship report last year, I think 2021, only 13% of the board positions in the Singapore listed companies are filled by women.
Really?
Yeah, that's way below
And
our
this is
aspiration target of 20% by 2020. So I believe
I didn't know that.
diversity can bring more skills and experience to board. And I think the current board composition need to continue to evolve to have what it takes to handle what we call the new era of VUCA world. VUCA, VUCA means volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
Okay.
Yeah.
I recall, hearing that a lot of these board appointments are based on personal network instead of proper assessment and selection. What can we go about doing?
I think that's a very good question. There is a widespread belief that Singapore lacks board-ready women.
Oh,
yes.
There's a belief.
There's a belief, widespread belief. If you talk to some of the board members, they'll tell you that we simply could not find board-ready women. So because of this belief, I also wrote an article
Did you?
in BT about titled Lack of Board-Ready Women. Perception or reality.
Oh, I love this. I think I recall. I think I asked you the other day.
Yeah. On one hand, you mentioned that most board positions are filled by personal network. It is true. Based on the research conducted in Malaysia by Russell Reynolds, that 88% of board positions are filled or sourced through their own personal network.
Right.
So a similar survey is being conducted. It's not available yet, but it's being conducted in Singapore. But one can probably expect similar findings, right?
I'm sure.
Yeah. So that to ensure that we bring in more diversity and quality to board members, right? And looking beyond our own personal network.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you being in the board, hopefully slowly but surely will change the game. But what kind of advice, Ting, that you would give to people out there who aspire, to join the board leadership team?
Before I give the advice to those who want to join board, I would say that the current board needs to be more open in looking for more diverse candidates. And also, instead of looking within the own network, leverage on, perhaps a professional network, perhaps search firm, to help identify candidates who has less visible persona, right? Less visible persona, public persona. And also to consider younger candidates. And first-time board members. And that will open up the talent pool and give other people more opportunities.
Right.
To join.
But if someone today were to, because I often get these questions, right? Because we hardly do board appointments, from where I'm working at. But a lot of people are asking, like, how do I get in to those board position? Is that something that they can actively, intentionally, like you say, reach out to?
So I think perhaps I'm sharing from my own personal experience from someone who just transitioned to board role, right? But of course, my number one advice is always to start early, because the capabilities or competencies that require as board member may not be the same as those in the power C-suite careers. So I first thought about joining board role was about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it
when
has
I was
been
still
kind of like
visa. Still in visa. And I spoke to I spoke to a few experienced board member, asking them about how is serving boards like,
Okay. So networking again, going back to your point.
And I would say that the first thing is to start early, to build up that. And also think about where you can add value, what kind of role you like to play on board, and what's your unique value proposition in addition to building up the board relevant experience.
Yeah.
So I think that is really number one. And I think number two, I said that I noticed successful board members tend to master this art of asking the right question, to steer the conversation, and to also help management to uncover potential blind spots, and also to consider alternative options without telling.
Yeah.
So the other one is really just basic competency of being able to interpret financial reports, understand the capital structures.
At the end of the day, the advice to joining board positions, I think, Ting, is still go back to your 5 core elements. You know, because you mentioned about network as well, right? It's about read and reputation. Because if you don't have that fundamental, you know, then you won't have the lack of the recommendation, the sponsor and all that, right?
Yeah. You know, it's all connected anyway. But I like to point out the one couple of more things that's very important to get to prepare yourself. One is having the strategic thinking or the understanding of the emerging technological trends and digital trends, because we are operating in the new era of VUCA world.
Yeah.
So the ability to spot disruptive trends, help identify what we call the obsolescence risks, is highly valued as well. And of course, the other 2 important advice I would like to say is, don't be shy to tell people your intention to serve on boards. Be open about it.
I see.
Tell more people.
Tell
right?
more people. Can I ask you, I mean, you have been someone who is so inspiring to many in the market, maybe without you knowing, but I can tell you, right?
Thank you.
You inspired me, and you inspired many others out there in the you know, in the industry or even outside of the industry, because obviously you cross so many different industries. When you grow up, who inspired you? I mean, I'm always curious. Someone like yourself who's so inspiring, but who inspired you?
Well, I would say it's my dad, because he's very progressive, right? And and he treat all of us quite equal, both sons and daughters. So that's why we feel that we believe that we have the ability to accomplish anything that we wanted, because he never sort of imposed any sort of gender expectations on us. But instead of a leader, I would like to share with you a story, a true story that truly inspired me. Is about a bushman from Botswana.
Botswana.
So Botswana is a country in South Africa with only 2 million population.
Right.
And hunting was, you know, for most people, they hunt, right? So this bushman, who has been hunting all his life, when Botswana banned hunting in 2014, he lost his only livelihood that he knew, right? He had. And he was already in his 90s. But today, he successfully crossed from being a hunter to become a tour guide. So he moved into a hospitality industry. So today, he works for Jack's Camp, and he is a tour guide for the 2-hour Walking with a Bushman immersion program. And he wears watch so that he could show up on time, which he never had to wear any watch, right? And he learned to speak simple English, which I have no problem understanding him.
Wow.
And to me, you know, what inspired me the most about him is that he is someone who is willing to continue to adapt and to commit to lifelong learning and to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Awesome. Love this.
Yeah.
Learn,
unlearn, and relearn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say that if a bushman in his 90s can continue to do that, there's no reason for us not to, right?
Oh, so true.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I really love this story, because I think that says a lot about, especially we are in the digital age, especially, or digital genesis, you call it, right? A lot of people out there are having fear, uncertainty about what's going to be like future. But like you say, if you're willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn,
yes,
you can conquer anything. And I really like that. But I think I also want to hear from you, right? I mean, when I've known you for so many years, I know there was certain industry, of course, very male dominated.
Yeah.
What was some of the learnings that you have experienced that you can share with the audience, especially the women out there who thrive to be a female exec like yourself?
Let me share 3 most significant experiences. The first one is about proactive in managing unconscious bias or gender bias.
Okay.
So my first challenge came when I was pregnant with my first child, my son. And I was deeply disappointed when I was bypassed for my promotion.
Right.
And of course, I understand. It's probably, I could understand why they thought at the time I was not the appropriate candidate to take on this larger role because it requires extensive traveling.
Right.
Because I was pregnant, right?
Right.
But what upsets me the most is that they did not consult me. They just made the assumption that I wouldn't want to take on that
The
role.
traveling
Right?
job.
Yeah, that bigger
Right.
role. So I learned these invaluable lessons earlier on that we need to be out there managing these unconscious bias because they're not going to go away. We have to live with it.
So true though.
Yeah. So when I came back from my maternity leave, at the time I only had 2 months. Maternity leave, that was long time ago.
That's so true.
Yeah. And I remember asking for a meeting with my male manager to talk about my long-term career aspiration.
Right.
And I asked for more growth opportunities,
Stretch assignments.
stress assignments. And eventually I got another regional role so that I can continue to learn and progress in my career. The second experience is about making that strategic trade-off.
Yeah.
So one of the, I was offered this overseas assignment, a big promotion, but I declined that offer because my son was still very young. And I decided at the time that keeping my family unit together is more important than that promotion. But I also continued to travel extensively so that I would not miss out on other opportunities. So as you see, life is about making all these trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
And I believe it's not just for women, it's for men too. Because my husband was offered other opportunities, he had to make that same trade-off, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So you reckon that some of the key lessons, it's firstly, I really like that you say consciously managing the unconscious biasness, right? At workplace. I think you're right. We're going to live with it, right? For as long as we are in this, because it's natural.
And it's nothing wrong with that
Yeah.
as well, but just do not make that assumption, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is very important. And the last experience is very important as well.
Yeah.
That was only recently. I interviewed this very capable and talented woman
Yeah.
for the head role. She was very humble to point out that there are areas that she needs to improve and that she thought that role was too much of a stretch. And she offered to join as a deputy head to prove herself first instead of joining as a head role, which I was ready to offer.
Wow.
So of course she joined us as the deputy head. And 1 year later, she outperformed her peers and I promoted her to the head role. But the lesson learned here is that while we appreciate the virtue of humility, but I think sometimes when women short sell themselves or undersell themselves, it may hurt them when competing for the top jobs as well, right?
But you see, I love what you're saying. Being challenged at the discomfort and taking stretch assignments.
Yeah.
But back to your example about this lady, and I think I've seen that quite often, especially women who just given birth.
Oh.
Very often they would say, because I just given birth, I'm okay not to take the top job, even though they're ready. I think you seem to be someone who, again, like I said a few times, like have it all figured out. it's easier said than done, like what you mentioned, all these, I agree, it's the courage, it's the resilience and all. But to me, that is not an easy journey for you. You mentioned earlier strategic trade-off. Is there such thing as earlier career, I do much more trade-off, and how do we manage that?
Okay, I suppose the question here is about what's the definition of balance, and who defines balance?
Yeah.
So to me, earlier I talk a lot about life is all about making that strategic choices and trade-offs in life. So to me, I think life is all about making that trade-off, so that with the key objective of accomplishing the optimum outcome in life. So when you talk about having the trade-offs, so it's not so much of the balance, but it's more of a trade-off, right? Of course, I have many setbacks. I've learned from each setback, but instead of talking about mistakes, I would probably say that perhaps I wish I could have adopted a different perspective at looking at some things.
Okay.
Yeah, I think only knowing that, and years later, it's a bit too late, but years later,
Not too late.
only a few years ago, I realized this is one key realization is, well, success requires effort, but effort does not always lead to the desired outcome. The only control that we have is over the kind of response we choose to have when we fail, and what we learn from it, right? Perhaps I share my first strategic choice I had to make, and to me, that was my decision on spouse selection. That is the most important decision in life for many of us, but we don't think much about it. So I give you an example. When I graduated with my MBA in the US, I was given the opportunity to work in the US, but I chose to move to Singapore.
Wow.
To marry my husband, who was a Singaporean.
I see. That's how you ended up here.
Yeah.
Right.
So we've been married for 30 years, right? So to me, that is still one of my best decisions in life.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. So he's someone that he's really progressive. He, respect me a lot and is very understanding. So I think I think I wouldn't be able to accomplish so much. He doesn't expect me to fulfill that wifey role. So let's give you an example. At home, he loves to cook, right? So he loves to cook for the family on Sunday. He's very good at pairing food and wine because he's an excellent palate.
Wow.
Me, on the other hand,
You just eat.
No, eat. Of course, I eat. And I also contribute in a way that I am more involved in financial and investment decisions because of my financial background. Right?
Sure.
So, and on parenthood, we also reached this agreement that we will raise our children without gender expectation, starting from toy selection. So we give our boy and girl the same freedom to choose whatever they like. So my boy happens to like his cooking set and toy cars.
Really?
Yeah. And I never said that you cannot have this kitchen set.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure.
My daughter prefers card games. And instead of Barbie doll.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. So Ting, I wish I had more time with you, but to bring this session to a wonderful close, I have this $1 million question that I know a lot of people have been wanting to ask. Can women have it all?
What do you think?
I don't know. I'm still struggling here.
Okay.
That's why.
Of course not. Life is all about making that strategic trade-off, that choices in life, right? So I like to mention this strategic trade-off and not sacrifice. The difference between that is sacrifice means that you are being victimized. It feels like you're not the one in control. Whereas making that strategic trade-off it means that you are making that decision, that trade-off.
Well said. I think I'm guilty of that, always saying the word. I sacrifice my time to do this and that, and often it's not healthy, whenever I'm with my kid or whenever I'm with work, because I'm thinking I'm sacrificing the time with my kids, sacrificing, etc.
Yeah.
So I really like this. Thanks so much, Ting. Really appreciate your time and agreeing to be on the Shift podcast. And I thoroughly enjoy our session, and I hope the rest enjoy as well. Thank you so much, Ting.
Thanks, Pat, for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Shift podcast. If our content resonates with you, please share, leave a comment, like, and subscribe to our channel on all the platforms that the podcast is on. Stay tuned for the next episode.